Classes in session.
And welcome to Unlearn 16 Classes in Session. Guys, I'm beside myself. I'm beside myself because today, look at this gentleman sitting right over here. Today we have Adam Busch, former, current, lifelong Buffy the Vampire Slayer cast member. And I think my true love developed because I'm not going to lie. You had a lot to overcome with Warren. Was over, I'm sorry, you're going to carry the moniker forever. Was over interacting with you and listening to you and hearing your opinions on Twitter and the ability of to be articulate and to the point and funny and intelligent and all of those beautiful things. I am very thankful you decided to come on today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I think today we're going to talk about a lot of stuff, guys. We're going to talk a little bit about Buffy because I can't help myself. But we're also going to talk about politics. We're going to talk about society. We're going to talk about some social justice issues. We have no idea which place this can possibly go. But since we're taping this on election day in the United States, Adam, how do you feel in the pit of your stomach about today?
In the pit of my stomach, I have a bad feeling, but I normally feel that way. I feel like there was some progress and there was some backward movement, and
Right.
It's frustrating.
And so what is I travel to the United States a lot, and you're in California right now?
Mm-hmm.
What would you say the vibe is? Like, you come from a very progressive state, but there's interesting parts about California because it's such a huge state, and it is interesting. You can go from one district to the next and be like on a whole different planet.
Mm-hmm.
What do you feel like the vibe is there?
Right now, there's a lot of good things happening in California. There were a lot of nice. There was Robert Garcia won. That was very exciting for us. It looks like Rex Richardson will win. That's very exciting for us. I hope Fatima wins for Assembly. That's very exciting, and it's all moving the right way. But Rick Caruso is really scary, and it's very divided over him, and it's very personal, and it's very aggressive and violent, and it's being used really well to divide people here in California, because that just seems to be the issue. That's the new Trump. That's the new MAGA hat, is how you feel about Caruso.
Right. And do you think, okay, so we're talking about politics. It's funny the way that we get people involved in politics. I think this heightened level, and I don't want to spend much time talking about Trump, but this increased heightened level of of divisiveness, of us versus them, of the future versus the past, of really sedimenting. That's not even a word. Cementing?
I know what you meant.
Really cementing you into one idea or the next. Do you feel as though that's the driving force, like that kind of oppositional tactic?
I feel like in America, ever since Karl Rove, that 51% needed to win mentality has stayed dominant in politics. And I feel like in more positive ways, that's how art has become. It's become very niche. There's not as many global hits. Everything is very specific and speaks to its own little audience. And I feel like politics has moved that way also in a disappointing way, whereas people are not looking to get everyone. They're just looking to get their little base and get them riled up and then have them lead.
Right. What would you say, and I know you don't mind talking politics, but what would you say if you were going to list off three things? What are the three things you care about? Three things. That's all you get. Top three. In terms of whatever, you can decide those parameters. In terms of whatever, when you think about where the United States stands, where you want them to go as a person, what you think the best sort of societal development looks like, what three things would you put at top of your agenda?
They would have to be pro-choice. They would have to be pro-universal health care, and they would have to have some eye on the environment and what's happening here.
Right.
And if they're not going to address those three things, you can say those three things and I get very excited, and I'll probably have your back.
Let's talk about the environment a little bit. That's not my wheelhouse. I'm not like an expert when it comes to, people are they'll talk about carbon emissions and food production and whatever. I don't have all those gauges in my head. Here's my question. How do we put environment in a serious way on the table, given that depending on what office you're in, if you're in the House, it's 2 years, the Senate 6, the president, the Oval Office every 4. How on earth do we put forward an agenda? Because it's going to cost us money. Let's rip off that Band-Aid right now. Nobody's saying it out loud, but that's the bottom line. Wouldn't you love a politician to say, it's going to cost us billions, 100%? There's no way around it. But how do we establish that kind of policy if I only get elected for 2 years and no matter how much money I take from you, nothing's going to happen in 2 years to fix the environment. And then my base is going to get mad because I've taken money and nothing's happened. How do we get around that, do you think?
It's the same problem we have with infrastructure. How do things get
Yeah,
built if you're only elected for 2 years when it
right,
takes a decade to build them? Maybe there's a way to tie it together so it's more appealing, because these are projects that take 10, 20 years. These are ones
right.
that involve science. Maybe there's some way to have it be an ongoing thing. I really don't know the answer. It's a great question.
And I think it's just so incredibly fundamental. And I think what Republicans rely on is that instant gratification, right? It's going to happen now. It's going to happen now. And they're tapping into not people necessarily, and I know people love to divide Republicans and Democrats, like good versus evil, but not really like that. You're tapping into what happens now in your life, and that's very real to everybody. What's happening to me right now is very real. And if you can make my life better now, that that has weight for everybody. And I think it's very hard for us to think outside of now, you
How
know.
do we appeal to that? How do we tie that into projects that take 10, 20, 50,
'Cause
100
and
years?
they all do. All of the good, all of the significant things take that long to do. The only way I can foresee this happening is if there's projects, and I can't even imagine it right now, that cross those lines that you say, listen, we need to build hospitals. We need to build, that kind of infrastructure. We need to build some sort of regulation across the board so that we're always going in this direction. But you're right. I feel like everybody, and it's happening in Canada to some degree, instead of getting more, and maybe this is the reason, instead of getting more global, because everything is, and it's scary, and it's big, and it's unmanageable, and it's uncontrollable, and it's very, for the most part, anti democratic because you can't vote for the world, we're receding. Right?
What do you mean?
Well, like as a voter, um, you know this. Everybody in the United States is blaming Joe Biden for inflation. Every rational person understands that that's not his to shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
But if Joe Biden or Pierre Trudeau, sorry, that's a Freudian slip, Justin Trudeau or whoever was going to take this on, they would have to admit the really dangerous reality that there is no national government on this planet, except for maybe North Korea, that has the ability to control its own economy. It doesn't exist. We're dependent on you, you're dependent on us, you're dependent on oil from this part, you're dependent on computer parts from here. None of it. We have this globalized system of economy. And when it all shuts down and it comes to a screeching halt because of a pandemic, which is also a global issue, we can't control that. We look for somebody to blame. And then our leaders don't say the one thing that they need to say, but they're scared to say, which is, I can't control it. Right?
Or I don't know.
I don't know. I can't. Could you imagine if a Democrat and Republican could sit in the same room and say, globalization, economic globalization is such an incredible force that we can't control the reins. That's why inflation is what it is. That's why gas prices are what they are. Could we become an isolationist nation? Sure we could, but that didn't pan out so well pre 1914, right? That doesn't work out so well for what we need and what we want and the kind of, global entity we're trying to find.
And we'd miss out on so many wonderful things if we were isolated.
So many things, right? How many things? All right, I want to ask, we're going to get deep into it, but I got to ask you a couple questions. We're going to talk
Yeah.
a little bit. We're going to go all over the place today. I
Okay.
can't help myself. We're going to talk a couple questions. Number one, favorite television show you've ever watched? These are quick fire.
The Wire.
Nice. God, I love that show. Number two, favorite cartoon as a kid?
Oh, I had so many. I really like the Muppet Babies.
The, not the Muppet. You go straight for the Muppet Babies.
Well,
I
they were the
like
cartoon version, yeah.
I like that answer. That's because you're 3 years younger than me. You're just in that level where that kind of hits your
Maybe
demographic.
it was just the theme song I liked. I still like the theme song. I haven't seen
It's
it in a
solid.
while, but
It is. It is. I have a bunch of my grade 7 and 8s really love the Muppets right now. I don't know why. I don't know where they're finding it, but they saw a book on my desk and they're running with it. Favorite band or musician?
Bob Dylan.
Nice. Lyrics. You're all about the lyrics, right?
I do like a good lyric. However, I love listening to languages I don't understand because it helps me appreciate the music more because I'm not hung up on
Oh,
the lyrics and I can just kind of get the quality and the sound of the emotion and really
right.
tap into the song into a lot of different kinds of music that I feel like I probably wouldn't enjoy if I knew what they were singing.
Interesting. Can you give me an example?
Rammstein.
Where's that from?
They're a German metal band.
A German. I never in a million years. Are you saying Bob Dylan
Mhm.
and wait for it, a German metal band? Yeah, I'm gonna
Mhm.
put that right there. I like it.
I went to see them live because the lead singer Till Lindemann was just fascinating, and he was putting on this like silent Beckett play with face masks and doing these really. It translated through any language, and I was fascinated by these videos. And then I saw he was coming to Los Angeles, so I went to the show, and it was the first time they have been able to bring such a big show to America, and it was incredible. And I had the greatest time. And I suspect if I knew what he was singing about, I wouldn't like it as much.
But you like the sentiment.
I love how it
You like
feels. I love it.
somehow the yeah.
Because there's
Um,
there's this, and I'm not I love folk music. This is not
right.
necessarily the kind of music I know a lot about, but the band is very aggressive, but he sings like a drunk Leonard Cohen, and it's really beautiful. He's
I'm
not.
gonna
It
have
doesn't sound aggressive. It sounds very just fluid. I love it.
interesting, interesting. And this goes into a great point because I think what we really need to start tapping into, and I know we talked about this a little bit, is the power of art and the power of, I mean, music is just a one expression of art, but the power of art that really truly resonates with people. And I really think when I talk so much about pop culture or music or theater or whatever, these are the things that are our soul, right? These are our heart. This is what we're tied to in a way. And honest to God, I think if we could elevate that, we've been in, we're similar ages, right? So we would have went through the time where the arts and humanities would have been big, and then all of a sudden, everybody and their brother was only supposed to care about science and computers. That was it. That was all you were supposed to care about because everything else was crap, and you weren't going to ever have a life if you're going to die poor and alone if you did the art, right? And we
Mhm.
went through that, and I feel as though there's this a little bit of a swell um, coming when it comes to the tie between art and activism and empowerment. What do you think about that?
It'd be nice if people understood that art could be used simply as empowerment and as therapy and as a means with which to find yourself and to find your voice and relax your body. People are comfortable taking yoga or boxing lessons because they like what that feels
Feels
like.
like, yeah,
They don't claim to want to be a professional boxer or a
right,
yogi, but somehow you can't do a play without people thinking you think you want to be Marilyn Monroe. And
right,
it's like, or you're not sending your kid down a horrible path with no future and no stability, like we're saying. If you just
right.
even let them do the school play, you're going to open up this box that we don't want them to go down. But we'll let
Mhm.
them play sports without the expectation of them becoming professional athletes. And I wish it had the same kind of accessibility because that shift from arts to science and math and athletics, it never readjusted. It's never
No,
come back. It's stayed that way.
yeah.
And it's disappointing. And I think a lot of people with a lot of things to say are missing out on the opportunity because of that, because of the stigma that it has in society, because of the lack of money and funding that goes into it.
And it's interesting because I think, I mean, it really does. And again, I'm not downplaying math and science. I'm going to have a bunch of comments that are going to be like, "You need math and engine." Okay, yeah, everybody, I get it. I'm not ignoring that. I'm not throwing that out the window. But what I am saying is maybe, just maybe, we should be focusing on people becoming more holistic. People be tapping into every single. I'm horrible at music. Awful. I can't sing a key. I can't play an instrument. But don't think for a second that taking a music class wouldn't bring me something important and valuable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Getting up on stage. I tell my kids, I think when I was a younger teacher, I was a little bit more black and white. These are the class, right? Because when I was a kid, acting was the scariest thing I've ever heard of in my entire life. I went into drama class. They said, be a tree. I said, I'm out. I'll see you later. And I walked right out. And the reason why I walked out was because in grade 9, you're all filled with ego and the way you look and the way you perceive yourself. And I don't want to look stupid. And I felt like I was going to look stupid. So I walked out the door. But then I watch my students now and I watch what they get. Forget the acting skill for a second. Forget if you're going on Broadway. Forget if you're going to be, the next Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Listen, you get a sense of accomplishment and a different kind of power than I've seen in any other kid in any other course. Oh, I think we froze there for a second.
I'm with
right? And I think encouraging that is probably one of the most important things we could do. And let's be honest, there's parts of drama and all of that that require tons of money, but there's other parts that don't, right?
Yeah, it just needs a drama teacher. That's all you need, and some students. You don't need anything
Yeah,
else.
you don't need anything
To
else.
stand in a place with your feet firmly planted on the ground and your arms outstretched, owning the space and making a long, loud sound. It's very therapeutic, and people rarely get to do it, especially in front of others. You were talking
Hmm.
about that fear of, making a fool of yourself. It's fun to live through that fear because
Yeah,
then it goes away because you learn that,
eventually,
yeah, it's not so bad. I was a fool in front of people,
as
you
long as
know?
the heart attack doesn't take over.
Well, yeah.
I was talked into doing a play. I've been a teacher 20 years. I was talked into doing Sweat by Lynn Nottage at my school. And I thought I was talked into a small role, Adam. I was talked into the second biggest role. I didn't know that until I read the play after I said, yes, of course I'll do it. Scariest thing I've ever done. But what was amazing about all of it, the director and my coworker was amazing, but the kids, the kids, 16, 17-year-old kids pulling me aside and saying, Joanna, you got this. You just need to breathe a little bit more. I got you. If you drop a line, I'll pick it up. Don't worry. I all of a sudden felt what it was like, A, to be a student again, but B, and this is the most important thing, I think, to have the capacity to connect with other people to do something great that you're scared of,
And to
right?
do it together as a team,
Yeah,
very similar to
100%.
sports. You weren't student teacher in that moment. You were both castmates in the
Absolutely.
same play, doing the same thing. It's another interesting thing is that if you're looking on a stage and there's a kid on the stage, you will always look at them. It doesn't matter if it's Meryl Streep or Uta Hagen, whoever is center stage. If there is a child on stage, your eye can't help but go to them because they're the only one who is looking around the theater and really seeing it. They're like, I'm in a theater. I'm looking at these people. I'm
Right.
fiddling with my thumbs. And no amount of acting can compete with that kind of natural human behavior. We love
Authentic.
seeing it, and it's addicting,
Yes.
and it only comes from the greats and from children.
There you go. And why is that? I guess with children, they have an authenticity that they haven't learned how to dance around yet. They are who they are. And the greats somehow get back to that authenticity,
That's exactly right. And it's done
right?
through exercises. You spend your whole life, and this is something you're very good at. I don't know if you were born that way or you worked at it maybe consciously or unconsciously, but that part of our brain that kind of reviews what we're about to say before we say it, or reviews what we're about to feel before we feel it, and kind of scans it to see if it's okay before it just lets it out. You have to spend years removing that and
Right,
being
right,
allowed to just let it come out like a long, loud sound, whatever you're feeling. You can't have a second of hesitation
right.
between what you're thinking and feeling. You have to just express it. And there's just no boundaries.
There aren't. And that's why, I mean, everybody asked me what's the best part about teaching, and I said learning every single time. It's easy. It's easy. And it's not just learning. I'm not learning more about history. I know more about those things. That's not what I'm talking about. Learning about life, learning how to be an authentic human being. And I think this is what, and I want to ask you about Buffy and your time on that and all the shows that you've been on and what your experience is, what you've drawn, what was the good, what was the bad, what was the amazing. But I think we're all in desperate search of authenticity. And I think the dangerous thing is, and what we've seen in politics, where I see the draws or I see the ties, in the absence of authenticity, we will settle for what seems like just sort of painful truths. You know what I mean? Like these people that seem like they have no filter, we think that's authentic when it's not. It's 100% manufactured. Do you understand what I mean by that? Like, well, look at Donald Trump for a second. I remember reading his tweets when he was allowed, to publicly speak. And all those spelling errors and grammatical errors. And I remember at some point thinking, I think somebody's doing that on purpose. Don't get me wrong, I don't think he's a genius by any stretch. Do I think he can make a grammatical mistake? Sure, I do. But isn't there a play? Isn't there a political play at making you seem like a man of the people if you don't know the difference between your and you are?
Of course there is.
There's a play there, right?
The same way there's a play where it's more exciting to believe the hit song came from the comment section of somebody's TikTok as opposed to manufactured in a studio somewhere in an A&R meeting room. It's much better to believe that. And it's possible. It's all possible. So we'll just fill in the blanks ourselves. And I think you're right. I think with an absence of authenticity, we'll just fill it in ourselves and hope for the best because we want to believe,
I think that is what we are in desperate need of. I don't know if the political system is set up to allow for it, but I think we are in desperate need of it. So you've had, obviously you're having a very long, robust acting career. What made you jump into that circle?
I was an unhappy kid who wanted to express himself and live close enough to New York City where I felt like it was possible. I was born in the Bronx and then raised in Long Island. And like you were talking about earlier, there's pockets of, Long Island is a very conservative, very rigid, post-war Levittown housing. Everything's supposed to look the same and feel the same. There's an overabundance of serial killers and artists that come from Long Island.
That should be a shirt.
I believe it should. I would wear it.
I like it.
I think because that kind of
Long Island.
Long Island. Serial killers and pop stars. You could also replace it with Orlando. They have that in common. But there's something to be said for, people that live half an hour from the greatest city in the world, arguably, and never go. If you if you're from Long Island and you buy a ticket to a Broadway show, you can ride on the Long Island Railroad for free because no one does it. It'll never happen. Long Islanders don't go to the city. They don't go to see Broadway shows like that. Most of them don't. They stay right where they are. And it can kind of breed this kind of discontent that I think Lou Reed also felt, I would hope, where you just look around and you're so close to just absolute acceptance and love and the greatest art and food and people you can imagine. And everyone here is very rigid and just looking at each other and keeping to themselves and breeding this kind of paranoia and this very, all the worst aspects of capitalism. And culturally, there's just no growth happening. So as soon as I learned I could get to the city and kind of reinvent myself, that was what I was about. And it started really young.
I want to go to Long Island. I feel like there's a thesis to be written there. I feel like your description of that is so painfully beautiful and perfect of the baseline problem in politics in America. I think that's it. You should call it the Long Island experiment. That feeling that you just described about people in Long Island, about being able to see it, touch it, go there, but you still don't. Why? What force field is holding you back from that? And then not only do you not go, but you're agitated about it. You're frustrated about it. You're angry about it.
But people all over the world if a touring company of a play or a band or a musician that you like is coming within 10 hours, you drive because you
Yes.
can't believe they're coming to Ontario. We got to go. Like, this is
Right.
insane. But everyone and everything is right there in New York City. And you say it was an experiment. It was called Levittown, and it was what we did with these soldiers after the war. They're all going to have houses. They're all going to look exactly the same. And
Right.
there'll be no competition, but in fact, it just bred competition.
Right.
There was a serial killer that went to my high school, and we had the same Spanish teacher. Her name
Stop it.
was, yeah. Her name was Mrs. Viteri, and the serial killer's name is Joel Rifkin. And I
Oh.
had her as a Spanish teacher, and she was very mean. She was very mean. I remember one day she had us go around the class and talk about what we wanted to be when we got older. I don't know what it had to do with Spanish because we were just talking in English, but I told her about my dreams, and she just humiliated me in the worst way and explained to me how it's never going to work and I need to focus on. It felt unnecessary, even if a lot of what she was saying was true. And I thought in that moment, well, if I was unbalanced,
Sure.
if I was looking for bad and I was Joel Rifkin, I would have found it. And he said in an interview that I had read that the first homicidal thoughts he ever had were for his high school Spanish teacher. So I raised my hand and I asked Mrs. Viteri if that was true. And I got sent to the principal's office, which was fair. I think that was fair.
It was true. It was, look, that is insane. Well, look, I'm terrified. All of a sudden, as a teacher right now, I'm starting to sweat a little bit. I'm like, have I humiliated anybody? But that is how powerful, we talk about education, but that's how powerful and significant those hallways can be. You know what I
My,
mean?
my parents were both New York City school teachers, and they used to commute from Long Island every day. And this was all we talked about at the dinner table was how poorly they were being treated, how little funding they were getting, how difficult everything was. My father's school tried to put on a play, but they had no music department. So me and my brothers were the pit band for the musical. We went into Queens because they had no, anyone that
Right.
played an instrument in the school was now a part of this band. But the, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
We were talking about,
Yeah, you were saying like your parents were talking about how hard it was to be teachers, and I was just saying like those hallways are what make or break
oh,
kids.
right. And my father used to always say that to keep in mind, a policeman doesn't have the right to come into your school and go through a kid's locker, but the principal does. These teachers and principals are given complete authority over when this child's allowed to go to the bathroom, who they're allowed to talk to, when they're allowed to eat, what they're allowed to eat. They're allowed
Right.
to confiscate anything they have. They can do things that cops can't do. So that relationship, when your only relationship is a fractured one at home to begin with, and then this person, you're right. It's a lot of power in that teacher's hands to do a lot of good or a lot of bad that I feel like a lot of people they're not even aware of it. They're
Yeah.
not even aware of the power they have in their hands.
Well, 100%, because you got to think like just because you're a teacher doesn't mean you're not broken. Just because you're a teacher doesn't mean you haven't perfected yourself as a person or gone to therapy and figured it out and done all of those, the significant things. And then all of a sudden, for 20, 25 years, you're given classroom after classroom of kids that you are going to have the opportunity to be either the best thing in the day or the worst thing in their day. And when you don't know, it's just like anybody in a relationship. Sometimes we pass on, we replicate bad behavior because we haven't fixed it in ourselves. We don't know we're doing it. We're not trying to be that person. We're not trying to damage anybody, but we do it nonetheless, right? But as a
Yeah.
teacher, you get 30 kids every hour to play that out. I often say that, I'm glad I love my education. I would go to school forever, but I'm pretty sure I should have had a lot more psychological training. I should have had a lot more of that training because anybody can read a history book. But the part about teaching that is scary and great all at the same time is, how do I get that kid to care? How do I get that kid to feel powerful enough to take a chance, to read the book, to give an idea, and to feel stronger because of it? That's psychology. That's that's something else, right?
Not only does it sound so hard, but how do you do that when you're given 40 minutes and 30 kids at a time?
You
It's
know,
pretty much impossible.
it is. It
It-
is.
it- those numbers don't work.
Right. I mean, and I teach at a private school, which I talk about a lot because people ask, how do you do all these things? Well, I'll tell you how. I don't have 40 kids. I don't have 30 kids. I have
Oh,
much smaller class sizes. And having much smaller class sizes allows me to do two things. Number one, get through the material, which is important, and most class never get through the material. But that's kind of a distant important too. I actually see the kid.
mm,
I actually see the individual. I see maybe what they need. I see maybe when their day isn't good. I see, and I'm not the easiest teacher in the world. I haven't patted everybody, and, I'm not all sunshines and roses. But when I, when you have the ability to connect with kids and to notice when their behavior changes, and then to pick up the phone and make that call and make that adjustment, that's a whole world right there.
yeah,
And
that's
that's
everything.
Joel Rifkin. God help you. But Joel Rifkin, I have no idea. I don't know much about his childhood. But you have these individuals, maybe not that extreme, but you have these individuals that can so easily be broken or built by a sentence when they're in grade 5, right?
Hmm.
When I talk to kids and adults that really hate school, I always feel the need to try to like convince them that they should have loved school. They'll all go back to when I was in grade 3, when my grade 5 gym teacher, and I'm like,
Yep.
this is what, as a 40-year-old person, this is still, that's a lot of power.
But it's everywhere. I hear the same thing about therapists and psychiatrists. You have one bad experience with an ill-informed therapist and you go, I don't like therapy. I
Yeah,
believe in
right,
method acting. There are plenty of bad acting teachers out there. You meet with one who takes themselves too seriously, who doesn't want you to win, who wants something else, and you go, I don't like method acting. I don't like acting classes because of those one experiences. I don't like teachers. I don't like that entire subject because I
yeah.
didn't like the teacher. It's a huge power. And it's tough to have a bad experience like that and want to try again.
Yeah, absolutely. So after your Spanish teacher, which we've named a few times, I hope she feels really, she should be looking internally at herself right about now. After that, so you have a person like that, but it sounds like you had two parents that were probably like, incredibly supportive. Was
That's
that the
exactly right.
balance for you?
They were the ones who took me to the city every Sunday to see a Broadway show, to go to Chinatown. They were the ones
Right,
who spent whatever money they had on just culture, on just exposing us to whatever they could. And it was very effective. And as
right,
soon as I fell in love with that, I just didn't want to stop. And I started taking classes when I was really young and they supported it.
right. And
And
so as you progressed and you started getting all these gigs, what was the first gig you got that I know you had a lot of different little ones, but what are the, like, when you were young, what's if I said give me the one memory, what is it of and why do you think it's shoved in there so deep?
can I do two?
Yeah.
Because they came
There you go.
simultaneously. And I'm working on duality anyway. The first one was the first film I did was called Leon the Professional, and it was with Gary Oldman and Jean Reno and Natalie Portman, and I had the smallest role in the film. But the director, Luc Besson, made me feel like I had the biggest role in the film. He told me a backstory for my character that no one knows about, but made me feel and allowed me to just express myself in all of these ways. And it was the first time I got to take those things I'd done in class and just apply them there, and also see how silly I looked in my chair doing my warm up in front of people, and what I
Right.
should keep to myself and what I could share, and seeing how Gary Oldman would kind of turn it on and turn it off. It was still, maybe to this day, one of the best experience I ever had on a film set. And the other was a pilot I did for a Nickelodeon show called The Mystery Files of Shelby Woo. And we shot it in Orlando in a theme park, and it was just everything I'd wanted at that time all at once. I felt very free. I became best friends with my castmates. I didn't have to
Right.
go to school anymore. I was going to get tutored now. We got picked up. It became a series. I was going to live in this theme park. My brother was going to become my guardian, and everything was all right. I saw how acting and art can be used to just can be very fulfilling.
Yeah. Well, I feel like that your first director, what was his name again?
Luc Besson.
Luc Besson. I feel like he's a teacher. I feel like all great directors are teachers. And they look and they can figure out who needs what on their set in order to get the best possible thing out of amazing people.
You know, I never thought of it like that, but I think you're exactly right. I think that's what it is. He knew what I needed, and he probably knew who needed to be left alone and not talked to. And
That's
I think he
hard.
saw that in me, and you're absolutely right. You're
That is
absolutely
so
right.
cool.
It's that quality of wanting the person to win. Some
Yeah.
people want to impart their wisdom more than they want you to win. Some people believe in a strict discipline, and they need that to be right rather
Mhm.
than just whatever's right for you. And the truth
And
is,
that's wow. Wouldn't we love to apply that to the political system? Wouldn't we love wouldn't we love to apply that? How do the most people win? What do they need? What do they rather than this is the way I've always done it. This is the way my mom and my dad worked my house, so we're going to do it this way. And it never works ever in the history of time. Meanwhile, you do it your way, you do it, your director's way, and all of a sudden you have these people that know they are powerful, important, and can do anything. And if we can fill a country with those people, we don't need to worry about anything else. Right? That's
yeah,
it. That's all that I mean, and that's why when I talk about education, I know you're passionate about education. When I talk about education, I'm like, pour money. Pour it. You should have waves of money coming at the educational system, waves of money. And you don't want to know what else? Expect more from teachers. Have us go to school longer, have us get more degrees, but then waves of money. So this is the place in which we build those kind of minds, because if we do that, guess what? Our criminal justice system takes care of itself. Our healthcare system ends up taking care of itself. Our unemployment rates, our domestic violent rates, our drug addiction, our alcoholism, they all take care of themselves, shockingly, when we make room to build, you know, amazing, fulfilled, empowered people.
this isn't a hypothesis or an experiment. Like these are proven facts
That's it.
that if you put money in that direction, that's the result you get. What drove my parents out of teaching was the forced curriculum, was
Oh,
the standardized tests that went across the board, and that became all they cared about. Was not that the kids learned, but that they learned a specific way and that they
mhm.
could pass this specific test that has not been proven to make people smarter.
Well, and it's a silly thing. I like to define the difference, and I constantly define the difference between what is being smart and what is being intelligent. And sometimes I look at smart as being able to see the rules before you, conform to the rules, do what you got to do in that setting in order to succeed, right? That's smart. But intelligent is being able to have a lot of transferable knowledge and ideas, being able to step back from the system, look at it as a whole, and go, this could be better, this could be better, I'm going to change this because I can get to this result. That kind of creativity is an intelligence that unfortunately in a lot of school systems we just stifle again and again and again and again. And we do it with these standardized tests, which are hilarious, but it gives the illusion to the masses that we're good at our jobs. You know, well, my class got 90 on this test, and everybody, what a great teacher. But meanwhile, those kids can't step into the world and operate in a variety of circumstances with many people and many different sort of changing realities because they start to crumble because they like the structure. Right? I think that all of those things are just like so problematic and so upsetting that we keep imposing all of that, and that's the reason why we get rid of the arts, in my opinion, is because that builds intelligent kids.
I wished when you had asked me earlier about those 3 things I was looking for in a candidate, I went to specific issues. I wished I'd said empathy as the number one thing because it's what
Oh,
I was
wow.
thinking, but it wasn't an issue. And when you talked about the difference between smart and intelligent, I feel like empathy is
Yeah.
that difference, that one factor there that if you can, and even as you were describing intelligence, it's the ability to see a situation and relate to it and empathize with it and put yourself in it or their, shoes and then work from there, as opposed to, like you were saying, well, this is what we did in my house, so that's what we're going to do here.
And that kind of empathy is only a product of, I don't think, like, I think kids have it naturally, to be honest with you, but I think that empathy really comes from education. And I don't just, when I talk about education, I'm also not just talking about sit down and read this book, sit down in school. I'm talking about the kind of education you got when every Sunday you took the train into New York, the kind of education that people get when they put themselves in situations with different people, different cultures, different backgrounds, different belief systems, and embed themselves and get to know those people. That kind of diversification, when I talk about diversity, it's not because I just want all of us to hold hands and sing around a campfire. It's because I genuinely believe that the more the diverse the ideas and the opinions in a room, the better conclusion you will come to. And if you never put yourself in that room, you never get any smarter, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I constantly want to be around people I disagree with sometimes because, and even vehemently disagree with,
The
because
conversations
I
are better.
feel is what's that?
The conversations are better, I found.
Well, I mean, you need an intelligent person sitting on the other side, even if they vehemently. There, I mean, there's basic building blocks that I'm not willing to concede, right? Like sitting in the same room with somebody who is horrifically homophobic or transphobic or racist, or
Sure.
I don't know how far I'm getting with you, but sitting with somebody, let's say, that has grown up. I don't know the demographic of Long Island, but let's say has grown up in a small Midwestern town, predominantly white, predominantly Christian, predominantly straight. That person just doesn't know yet. I'm fascinated by that person. I'm fascinated by the person who hasn't stepped out of that area, stepped out of that town. Now, could they have some stereotypical beliefs? 100% they will. Of course they will. But that's just because they haven't experienced yet, right? And I'm all about that's how you change everybody.
It allows you to love them because it's not their fault if they haven't been exposed to anything.
There you go. And it allows you to have those conversations. Like sometimes I look at the election results and I just want to go to every small town in those red states, I swear to God, every small town, and sit in a coffee shop for 8 hours a day and talk to every single person that walks in about life as I see it, looking the way I do. Because I'm not sure how many people walk into town looking like that, and give them that and say, listen, there's so much more out there. Have you thought of this? Because I don't think, I'm an optimist, first of all, but I don't think people are inherently horrible. I think sometimes our ignorance, and I don't mean stupidity, I just mean not knowing, our ignorance allows us to be manipulated by certain people to lead us down a road of actually hating. And it's just the ignorance. If we get rid of that, that road never gets taken.
It's tough. If I wish, when you love your parents and your parents believe something, it can
Mm-hmm.
almost be impossible to believe
So
that
hard.
they're evil or that they believe in something that's promoting evil or that they would or could hate you. And so many of the alternatives are just so much easier or feel so much more appealing than having to fight against that for your
Mm-hmm.
whole life. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to expect people to look at an organized religion that they're a part of that all they equate with it was going with their mother on Sunday and having this warm, nice feeling and being
There we
close
go.
to their mother. And when I'm trying to explain to them just about simple things that maybe this organized religion is doing that is not within its own people's best interest, I sound like I don't want you and your mother to, I'm taking that Sunday away from you. I
Right.
sound like I am just spoiling this beautiful thing. Do you know what I mean? Where
100%.
you talk about Buffy, and the most common thing I hear from people is, oh, I used to watch this on this time with these group of people, and it takes me back to them whenever I watch it, and we're closer because of it. And I wouldn't ever want anything to take that away
Mm-hmm.
from people. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah. Good. Nostalgia is the most powerful and devastating force, period. Right? I did a TikTok. I found, you know, those big gumballs you used to get in the sleeve? They're different colors, like they're rainbow and they're giant gumballs.
Mm.
I don't know. It's old school candy. I bought that one time and I sat in my car and I ate one and I almost broke a tooth. And I thought to myself, this gum right here, very, very metaphoric, right? We remember things a certain way when we were kids. First of all, because we had no idea of life, number one. And number two, it was our first experience with that. And so we're very limited and narrow in what we're experiencing. So when you got that gumball, especially out of those gumball machines, which by the way might be the center of COVID, I'm not too sure. No one's looked into that. But um, when you got that gumball out of the machine and you chewed it for 5 seconds and then got a sore jaw and had to spit it out and ask your mom for another quarter, it was the best, right? And as an adult, I rebought that. I popped it in my mouth. I went, oh my God, what? And I spit it out. I'm like, did I break something? Is everything in my, and I had this kind of epiphany where, don't get me wrong, I love my childhood. I love all the shows that go with it and all of those things, but I came to the conclusion that it's nostalgia, and heaven forbid an entire political campaign was based on it. Nostalgia is a very powerful thing to make us feel good, and it's a very powerful thing to weaponize if we want to, right?
According to sense memory and to method acting, these sensory experiences are the tools we use to feel everything. That
Yeah,
if you wanted to cry, you wouldn't think about the death that happened. You would simply explore sensorily when you found out the funeral.
right. If
What
take
did you
yourself back
feel?
to that.
And not what did you think, just what did you feel, what did you smell, what did you hear? And one of those sounds or feelings is going to be a trigger. It's why, your ex's perfume will always just, you can be anywhere doing anything, and if you were to smell that, you are immediately back there. You are that person. The sound of your mother's voice will always make you talk like your mother's child. Suddenly your voice gets higher. Suddenly you become a child. And who can say that we're not time traveling in those moments if
Hmm.
it was the taste of that jawbreaker that sent you back to your mother? And if you didn't break a tooth, if it was just, oh, there it is, she'd be there with you. You two would be sharing this
Right.
time, and you would be young and old, and she would be with you and also back then, and it all becomes one. It, it never even occurred to me until you said it to weaponize that sort of thing. But my God, how powerful that would be. I mean, that's the power you have with that. And that is the power that I guess you're right. A lot of these campaigns are going for when they're saying, you're right. Music was best when you were 18. Yep.
Look, you just said something that I mean, I got shivers when you said you can't think it, you have to feel it. Shoot. Is what I wish for the world, that they would stop thinking it and start feeling it. Because when you said that, so I did this play, right? And people kept telling me that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm like, I don't understand you. You keep saying these words. I don't, people were very much, my director and my friend is very much that kind of method act. He's like, Joanna, listen, you need to feel what it was then. You need to explore that feeling you had, not the instance. So, but in my sort of logical kind of head, it was all about thought and just sort of, okay, well, this happened, then this happened, then this happened, but I don't feel sad. I can't feel sad. How do I get in? And I honestly think that that's what the artistic world, whether they're poets or actors or musicians or whatever, you are able to feel it, which is which is why we are so drawn to you, why we are so empowered and inspired by you. And I also think, unfortunately for you guys, why you carry such a heavy weight. A lot of really great artists carry such a heavy weight because you always feel it. You've been able to tap into that, but if you tap into that, how do you control? Because I'm assuming it's a lot of waves, right? So I'm assuming when you said, and a lot of people struggle with, anxiety and depression, but I guarantee you would also deal with joy and love and epic levels of emotion, that the rest of us mere mortals aren't jumping into.
The one fun, the other half of it is the fun part, which is that once you access that emotion, it can't get through a tense muscle. So you have to be relaxed. You have to be physically relaxed all the time in the most uncomfortable, tense situations of your life.
That's insane.
Pretty much when the biggest job, your health insurance, everything is on the line, is the one instance where you need to be the most physically relaxed. And that is where we get a bit of that joy you're talking about. That is, we do get to see where people hold their tension, and we are constantly working on not having any ourselves. And it does tell, where people hold their tension in their body and what's going on. It is an interesting way to learn about people, is through observing that.
100%. When I did it, I was told to stand still. You said something earlier. You said stand in your space, own that space, like plant your feet. And again, I've heard that I don't know how many times, like, Joe, plant, because I walk, right? I pace my hands, my whatever. He's like, stop being so Joanna. And I'm like, I don't understand what you're talking about. I don't understand how to let go of me. He goes, you're going to start here. You're going to start by planting your feet. You need to plant your feet. You need to be in that space, and you need to own that space and understand you're going to act with the words that are coming out of your mouth. You're not going to pretend as though this is what you need to do. And the times that I was able to do it, which were very few because I'm not very good, it was insanely powerful. Right?
Oh, there was one moment where I was reading something, and it was a table read with a bunch of people, and I lost my place, and I knew my line was coming, and the other actors were talking, and it was one of those moments where my eye just landed on where it was at the moment I had to be speaking. So as I was speaking, I had no idea what I was saying. I was just getting the words out. Wow. And it got the biggest laugh. It was like a home run because I did nothing.
You did nothing.
I did nothing. I just said the line. I just said the words. And it was like everyone started laughing like it was the biggest punchline. If I had put any thought or effort into it, it would not have gone over as well.
I don't think, like, that is revelatory. Like, I hope when people are listening to it, they rewind and listen to that again. Because when you just are, if you can figure out how just to be, get out of your goddamn head. If you can figure out just to be, you will be the most exceptional, amazing, empowering person that you can ever be, ever, in any situation. How the hell do we teach everybody that? How do we do that? Like, how do we get that?
You're doing it with all the work you're doing every day.
I don't know, man. I don't even think I get that as much. You know what I mean? Like, I like to think I'm getting closer to it. It's funny because, lots of people talk about my age. They're like, how can you have all this? I go, how can you look younger but you sound like you have a lot of wisdom? I'm like, well, yeah, because I'm old. I'm 47. So at 47, I used to think I had it on lock at 20. Do you remember being 20?
Vaguely.
Remember, it's just like, you're just so, or I was so, I don't know if cocky is the word, but you're just like, I knew. And then when I got to 30, I'm like, God, I was an idiot. And then I got to 40, and I realized not only was I an idiot, but I used to think I was so authentic, but I had worked so hard at trying to be something, not necessarily not myself, but still trying to be something important, that I lost who I was, if that makes any sense.
It does.
And I think, how do we get closer to that? I see young kids, to be honest, because they're so much smarter than we are, but I see young kids in the newer generations getting closer to it because they're they talk about their mental health and they talk about these issues. And, I think that gets closer to who you are, possibly, because you're talking about your vulnerabilities. Whereas when we were kids, I mean, nobody did. Anybody go to therapy? Nobody talked about that when we were kids.
We didn't talk about our feelings openly, no. And if you did,
No.
it probably wasn't greeted with the best results, so you learn not to do it.
Yeah, and my mom used to be. I think she was a little scared when I was in high school. I come home, how's your day? Fine.
Right.
What do you mean fine? That's it? That's all you got? And I operated kind of here, right? Now, part of that probably was I wasn't out and I didn't know what those levels felt like. So there was even a part of myself, and I wasn't purposefully closeted, but there was a part of myself I was hiding from myself, which is insane, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as we get older, what do you think it is? Do you feel you're in your 40s now, right? Do you feel more you? Am I not allowed to say that? Do you feel more you now than ever before?
I like the Bob Dylan line, I was so much older then, I'm younger than that now. Because that journey that you spoke about, it does mirror a lot of if you pick any singer-songwriter from any genre from anywhere in the world, someone that's been around for 30, 40 years where they've been making records as a young person and now they're still making and writing songs as an adult, the trajectory of all of those themes are they start off going, I know everything, this is how it is. Nothing's going to change that. And it ends with nobody knows anything. We're all just searching and love is the answer.
Very Socratic. I feel like we should all have Socrates tattooed somewhere on our bodies. All right, so you're going through all of this amazing stuff and then you step on the Buffy set. What happens then? Did you know about Buffy? Like, because I know a lot of people, I've spoken to a lot of people from the cast and they're like, I didn't even watch an episode. So did you know about Buffy before you?
I was aware of it, yeah. I wasn't
But had you
following all
watched
of the
it?
episodes. I'd seen it, yeah. I had
Yeah.
seen the show. I wasn't following along in the beginning, but I wasn't aware of the how passionately people felt about it until I was cast in the trio and then came back. And then I got a sense of it during that time, just how much it meant to people and that it mirrored a lot of the band's fandom that I was a part of, like the passion and the intense
Insane,
scrutiny.
right?
Yeah, I mean,
Do people call you Warren a lot? Just out of curiosity, do you get a lot of that?
I get a lot of people stopping and thinking I look familiar, and then I get the very unique to me experience of watching their face realize who I remind them of, and then the anger that seeps in. And then it gets very clearly directed at me. And I'm still working on how I respond to that.
Your response should simply be, I got flayed. What more do you want from me?
I'm actually going to steal that. That's great.
That's the end. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what else could have happened, But you played, and I'm going to, one of, if not the, and I just finished doing a podcast where we reviewed literally every season of Buffy. Well, we did 2 episodes per season. But we just, when we spoke about your bad guy, and really you, not so much the other two, but you were one of the most, I'm not going to lie, hon, you were the worst bad guy, the baddest bad guy. And the reason was because you were, and I don't mean this to sound, horribly but you were men. Everything bad you could possibly pull, right, was funneled into your character, and you got to embody not some mystical whatever and all the metaphors that go on with Buffy and all of the gods and the demons, and they all have reason. You got to be really, truly evil on this planet.
In a world of demons and vampires and monsters, the scariest thing is often a young, chagrined white kid with access to money.
It's insane, right?
It's
Absolutely.
true. It
is
remains
true.
true. It's
It
scarier than
remains.
anything the universe has to offer.
It's
The
true.
Mars Voyager hasn't found anything scarier than that, and it's still searching.
And when you were going into it, so you read first, like you were in it, lightly, let's say lightly earlier on, but when you came back as the trio, I mean, when you were reading it, could you recognize the trajectory of this character and the kind of impact it was going to have?
I could see it. I didn't know the
Yeah.
kind of impact it would have, but I could see where it was going. I never knew where it was going. I had the experience like you did of watching it for the first time when I would read the script and we would see what would happen.
Hmm.
Are we going to make it through this episode? What's going to happen? And I saw it moving in that direction, and I never knew how or why. I was just grateful to be there because it
Hmm.
felt like we got to say a lot, and I got to do a lot, and I got to experience a lot, and I got to have some experiences I would have never imagined I would be in that place at that time doing that thing. I definitely felt like the writers were using us as a mouthpiece to say something. You felt that.
Hmm.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yep.
And I tried to, just like I would have to with Joel Rifkin, is I can't empathize, but I can say, oh, I can see how if I was unbalanced and I was in a similar situation, how would I feel? What would I do?
Hmm.
And I would recognize that at some point with all human beings, there just becomes a point of no turning back. And
Hmm.
once you've accepted that, you are a monster and you are dangerous and you do need to be dealt with,
Hmm.
because you can see it in there's just, I think there's a switch that happens, whether it's either drugs or it's just mental illness or whatever it is, but there can become a point where if it's untreated, I think there is no coming back, because the best definition of depression I ever heard was it's not seeing options for yourself.
Mm.
And that feels very real to me, because there's always options. They're always there. You just
Yeah.
don't see them. And that's what depression is. And there becomes a point, I've done it when I live downtown, and the homeless people are a part of your life and you're a part of theirs, and you're living together and you're helping each other. And with some people, you're like, this is going to work. And with other people, you're like, I don't know what I can do. I don't
Hmm.
know. There's just, maybe it's medication. Maybe it's something that I don't know about yet, but I can't
Hmm.
get you to understand what's happening here. I hope that doesn't sound cold or unsympathetic
No,
or
I think that
hopeless.
no, no, it doesn't sound hopeless because what you're saying is that it's just like, and it's also interesting because you, being the person you are and making the connections you do, when you think about the people that you have helped or you think about the connection you have made, it's kind of interesting. You go directly to the people you couldn't help. Again, that's very teacher of you, right? You you just remember the places where it didn't work. Meanwhile, you're not counting all the places that what you did made the world of difference. And what we need on this planet is a different person to talk to that other person that you couldn't connect to for whatever reason. Because I do believe there's always something that can be said, something that can connect, something that can break through a wall. And I don't always know it with every single person, but somebody else might,
It's
right?
interesting
So
you say that. Sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, all my experiences downtown were with a pit bull, and it's the reason I became so aware, because I was a new pit bull owner, and I didn't want the dog to be scared of the homeless, and I didn't want the homeless to be scared of the dog. And sometimes situations would get hairy where someone would just be yelling at us or screaming at us
Right.
or following us and not understanding that I'm scared for you right now because this is a
Mhm.
new pit bull, and I was told she's aggressive and had aggression done to her, and I'm really scared about what's going to happen here. That's why I had so much concern. My pit bull never made the wrong decision, but I will say that it was the one thing that seemed to break through when I would look in someone's eyes and see nothing there but spinning. They would see the dog, and something in their mind would recognize it as either a threat or as just, oh, you don't, or for good or bad. They would
Mhm.
see that, and it usually would end. That
Something
could
else.
usually end it. I also found that, at least this is unique to downtown Los Angeles, it's not the same in New York, but no matter what a homeless person is doing, if you simply address them and hand them a cigarette, they feel so grateful and will go away. And there's no situation. I would carry around cigarettes even when I stopped smoking, because there was no situation that couldn't immediately be ended with, here you go. because that is a lot more than a cigarette. It is now something they can sell outside at 2:00 in the morning for whatever they want. It is something to barter with. It is maybe something they just want to smoke and feel like a human being. Whatever it is, this acknowledgement of me seeing you and me handing you something and you not exiting this interaction negatively, you exiting it ahead, you do deserve it because you've had a rough night no matter who you are.
100%. I just finished talking actually about there used to be this homeless youth shelter. It was called Bridges for Youth. It was getting kids off the street, and they would do workshops with students. So I took my class down there, and these 17, 18-year-old kids would tell their story about how they became homeless, what they went through, and whatever. And I took, a private school kid, so 35 kids down there, and I was very much worried how they would respond, maybe not with the most empathy. First of all, they were my students were amazing. But second of all, when we listened to their stories, and they each sort of told us different stories. And then the main guy, the guy that ran the whole thing, he told us his story, and he spoke as though he has a stroke. So he spoke with a bit of a slur, and it took him a little bit longer. And he had described why that happened. It was due to a drug overdose, and he was taking drugs because he was being abused at home. And it's just a horrible story. And he talked about being homeless and what he did and who saved him, who gave him that chance. And then he talked about cigarettes. And I'll never forget this because you just nailed it on the head. This man, who, by the way, took 8 years to get through college because it just took him longer, but he wanted to do it. Every night he would spend with a box of stuff, blankets, cigarettes, food, whatever. And he put the box beside him, and he would go and sit in a park where homeless people in Toronto would be likely to frequent. He would never go up to anyone. He would sit there, and they would know if they needed something. They could ask, and if he had it, he'd give it. And he goes, the number one thing people would want are cigarettes. And my kid said, oh, why do they smoke? Like, why wouldn't they do something up? And he goes, let me tell you why. He goes, because having one cigarette is an appetite suppressant. And when you're hungry, and I don't mean hungry because you needed dinner that night and it was an hour late. I mean hungry like you haven't eaten for days. The pit in your stomach and the feeling is so horrible and uncontrollable. But if you can have a cigarette and it can suppress that, you can make that go away for hours. And I swear to God, all I wanted to do is carry around cigarettes so that I could hand them out, right? All of this prejudgment that we have in our heads is from a complete and utter lack of knowledge and awareness about the why and the how and the humanity of it, right? I'll never forget it. It was probably the most powerful thing I've ever been to. But to know, he's like, listen, not everybody wants to be helped. That's okay. He goes, but for those men and women to know I was there if they needed something, he goes, all I can think is that helped them that day.
Oh, it had to. I mean, asking for help is the hardest thing a human being can ever do. And for some reason, our society has just decided it is a sign of weakness in you, and we're just going to leave it at that. Not that it's actually a sign of strength. And it takes courage and strength to do that, not weakness. Absolutely. To ask for help. That's beautiful that he would do that and just leave them there and just allow it to exist.
And he did it every night. That's where he'd sit every night and just do that, So when you're finally done Buffy and it wraps, because Buffy really got big after, let's be honest. Like, Buffy was always on the verge of being canceled every 5 seconds, right? It was like, off this network. No, we're not coming back. The fans said, But after, is that when you felt the wave, I use the word cult appropriately, the wave of that energy?
I felt it. I had done an episode as Warren, and then they asked me to come back as a part of the trio. And in that in-between time, I would run into people that would come up to me that knew exactly who I was just from that one episode and knew more about what I was going to do when I was coming back than I did.
Because
they knew because they knew who I was going to be in the trio with, who was playing it. I didn't know that. They knew that Andrew was Tucker's cousin or his brother from back. I didn't know that.
Come on now.
Sorry. And I was like, this is, but I notice when, which side of the stage Dylan's coming on from, whether he's on his bus,
Sure.
whether his guitar player changed his hat, and all that stuff.
Right.
So I appreciate it. I love it. I love that excitement and passion and attention to detail, because it does matter. But that's when I learned, and it stayed, for a long time, that
Yeah.
kind of, there are no passive fans of that show, which I
No,
appreciate.
no, no.
And I think that's why it was always on the verge of cancellation, because those networks are just looking at numbers, and they weren't as savvy about engagement back then. And I think they didn't realize maybe the numbers weren't as high as some of these procedural cop shows, but nobody knows the name of the lead on this procedural cop show. They just know it's the cop. But this show, they know that I misspoke and said Tucker's cousin instead of Tucker's brother.
Because we're
Because
crazy.
that's true. No, because it's true. If you said a song was in A flat and it was an A, I'd correct you.
There we go. But I think that that's what's so powerful. And I want to ask you what you think about this. But I think, you say that some cop show. Well, there are shows that we put on every night because they don't impact us anyway. And they're enjoyable to watch while we eat dinner or talk to our spouse or clean our kitchen or whatever. And these standard stock shows are probably have super high ratings because they're good for everybody, but they're not great for anybody. Whereas you have a show like Buffy, which maybe didn't tap into, by the way, I think the title really put a crick in a lot of people wanting to watch it in the first place. But, you have people that when they bought into that show, like, I loved it, but I've heard people say it saved me from depression. It saved me from hurting myself. It gave me a sense of power. It gave me a sense of wellness. It gave me, and they go on. And I listen to those things and I think the depth of that show is what mattered. And you can't, one Buffy fan compared to like 100, I'm not going to name another show because I don't want to hurt anyone's feeling, but 100 fans of like the primetime 8 o'clock show that's on CBS, they're not even in the same hemisphere. Not even in the same hemisphere. Why do you think it resonated so much?
I think it did multiple things at the same time, and that's just rare in television. What you're talking about is shows that do one thing. We do a cop show, we do a comedy, we do a fantasy. I feel like we're either looking, maybe there's two kinds of entertainment or two kinds of entertainment viewers. We're either looking for something that will take us as far away from ourselves as possible so we can completely escape, and then we love it and we go, thank you, that was beautiful. Or we look for ourselves reflected back and we go, yes, that's me, that's beautiful. And when one fan gets the other, they don't enjoy it. When I'm looking for escapism and I just see myself shaving, I'm like, I want my money back. But if I'm looking to feel validated and I'm just getting some farcical fantasy, I feel like not connecting to any of this. This isn't for me. I feel more alone than when I started. But Buffy could do both. Buffy could give you true entertainment and fantasy, deeply grounded in reality. And it seemed the more fantastical the situation got, the more grounded in depth and reality it was. And it used that to say a lot of very brave new things. It could hide behind the fantastic element and sneak in some really, really cutting social commentary, using high school as a metaphor for life and using hell as, I could go on, but you get what I'm
Metaphor
saying.
for high school. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think, and I think it's funny because we, looking back on it, I mean, I love the show. I do force my every class to watch it, so that's enjoyable for them. But
which episodes do you make them watch?
as many as I can.
Okay.
I had a grade 6 class one year who wanted to start watching it because they knew I loved it. It was a young class. I don't ever teach that young. And I said, well, guys, we can't watch this in class. And they said, oh, that's okay. We'll come in on certain nights and watch it. And then we'll come in on weekends. Like, honest to God, they were like all in and they loved it. The first year is very campy and whatever. Anyways, they were all in. I had 10 kids in that class. They loved all of it. And we would talk about issues in it. We would laugh about it. We would tell the episodes that we didn't like, that we didn't think were fun. And then I sent them all home for the summer. And I realized we'd gotten to season 5 maybe or 4, and I realized they were all going to watch season 6, and I went, oh, uh-oh. Season 6 comes with a lot that I thought I needed to pick up the phone and say, okay, so we've been they knew we were watching Buffy. I go, I don't know if you know much about the show, but season 6 gets a little adult. There's a little adult scenes with Spike, your stuff that goes on. I mean, there's some adult stuff that goes on. It gets pretty dark. And I had parents saying, Joanna, it's okay. We know what's coming. It's the best thing you've done because our kids are talking to us about issues they've never talked about before. And they're doing it under this auspice that is so powerful. And I sat back and I went, what a great mechanism for that, you know? And I think it's also because we talked about it. But they, for the most part, love it. If I'm going to show an episode like a one-off, I'll show probably any of the Halloween ones because I love, like, you know, Fear itself, probably one of my favorites. You know, the little tiny fear demon. I like to show ones that can have a, you know, you don't need to watch anything else. You can just watch it. I often play the series finale because it's, you know, it's pretty awesome. I don't think I show Hush because they love the scary guys, but I don't think they get how awesome that episode really is on its own, you know? And there will be a lot of people who are like, I'm like, you got to give it a go. I'm like, you're going to watch season 1, but if you get through season 2 and you're not hooked, first of all, I don't know if we can be friends, but second of all, you won't be hooked. You won't, because you won't get it for whatever reason. You won't connect to it. But I just, you know, and the more people that I speak to about it, whether it's fans, whether it's actors, whether it's production people, like when they look back on it, and we can be critical. I love the fact that I can look back on Buffy and think, well, okay, issues about feminism in 1998 are very different than today. And some of them hold up and some of them don't. But what a cool conversation to still have, right? About the why. About what was hard to say in 1997.
People
Right?
always will need and deserve representation. And when you don't see yourself up on that screen ever, you feel very alone, very isolated. And I think Buffy allowed people to see themselves, people that had never seen themselves before or not presented in that way, and go, yes, that's me. Thank you.
In so many different ways. And then you've had this like onslaught. I mean, you know, Comic-Cons and fan expos and all of this stuff that kind of blew up after Buffy. And then you have all of this, you know, resurgence of people that will talk about it and that will apply it. U of T, which is a university in Toronto, has a course on Buffy. Did you know this? It's actually a senior level course about Buffy the Vampire Slayer and its feminist and epistemological themes as applied to pop culture and feminist ideology.
Absolutely.
I'm thinking I should just go back to school so I can take it, but
That sounds amazing.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it draws upon, it lets us have hard discussions about things that are hard, especially for kids, that sometimes we don't have a conduit to get into. You understand what I mean? Like,
I do.
and I think that's what it allows. You know, you had whatever metaphor was going on, you know, even simplistic one-off Buffys where like the girl that nobody talked to actually became invisible. Just something simple like that. That's not this grand, you know, leap of anything. But then it allowed kids to say, what does it feel like to not feel like people around you see you? And I had big discussions with 12-year-olds, with 15-year-olds about those themes that I don't see happening, to be honest. I don't know another show where it happens on that level.
No, that doesn't seem to have its heart in that place. I haven't found it.
So I think, you know, looking at, and I mean, unfortunately, you know, you got the character that everybody really, really hates. So that's a hard burden to carry. But to be able to do that character as well as you did, is such, I don't think there was another important role, a singular important role, outside of Buffy herself, that mirrored so clearly and painfully what needed to be mirrored.
I hope I don't know how to respond to that.
Don't you see it that way a little bit, or are you like, oh wait a minute, that's way too much praise? Like what? You're like,
I
don't you
mean,
see him as that?
it certain shows predicted things. There are certain shows that predicted there would be a pandemic, or that pointed out that we were not equipped to deal with
Mm-hmm.
a virus if it were to happen. There are certain shows that point out that we're not equipped to deal with a cyber attack, that if someone were to really, our government, we do not have the kind of things in place, and the kind of warfare that can be done using those methods and those tools. And I think Buffy the Vampire Slayer really predicted the incel and was a warning through Warren about what's going to happen if these people are left untreated or left to their own devices. And it was spot on. And I'm honored to be a part of that, warning, and to help
Mm-hmm.
spread that message and raise awareness about that, because it's true. And
Yeah.
we need to acknowledge it and recognize it with the same kind of strict empathy that we've been speaking of,
Yeah.
where there's an effort to understand. You don't have to agree to understand. I don't agree with Joel Rifkin, but I no, I don't understand, but you know, it helps bring you closer to understanding.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's so funny you talk about that, and we see what's going on in and we circled right back around. I love it when that happens by accident, but we circle right back around to this division. And one of the biggest divisions, you hear people driving home today through, guys like Jordan Peterson or Shapiro or Matt Walsh or heaven forbid Andrew Tate. You have these drives talking about alpha males and masculinity and what we've lost and what we need to build up and 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 my mind goes, guys, did you not watch Buffy? Was nobody paying attention? What are we doing? But I don't, when I talk about it like that, I agree with you. A lot of people want to just drive those guys into the dirt, so to speak. I would like nothing more than to have a conversation, because I think they're leading some people down a very, very dangerous road, and they're uplifting or highlighting or empowering the wrong ideals to take care of broken people. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. I also, at some point, I think it's okay to apply the term domestic terrorist when you're a threat to those around you.
And
And
it's like,
society is unfortunately blind to a lot of things. And I don't appreciate when men feel like things are suddenly moving unfairly against them, when it's like,
mhm,
it's been a certain way for a long time, and maybe there's going to be some growing pains or adjustment,
mhm.
but shut the fuck up and let this thing right itself and get out of the way of progress. Because the fact that you now feel uncomfortable in whatever public setting you feel uncomfortable is let's call that collateral damage, and just move on.
Yeah, I think, and it's interesting because as they do it, it's really, speaking of weaponizing nostalgia. And when we weaponize nostalgia, this idea of what once was, the funny part is we are never clearly depicting once was. What once was, are we? We're not clearly showing that image. We are pulling pieces of it from 1950, 1960, 1972, whatever era you want to pull what it was to be a man and a father and a husband. And we're negating all of the horrific things that went with that identity of that time. And we're just pulling the ones we want to pull,
Yeah,
right?
of course. Not taking responsibility for any of the bad, only remembering the good and moving on.
Yeah. And I think it's therein lies the problem. But I constantly try to take a step back, and I constantly try to understand. I mean, these men have hundreds of millions of people listening to them. Maybe that's a long shot. Millions anyway, tens of millions. And they're listening to somebody who is saying that they want to make them feel better, and they want to make them feel empowered, and they want to make them feel good. It's all good things. Those things all resonate, right? If I'm somebody lost, I love how we're going to use Rifkin through this whole thing. But if I'm a Rifkin, like, and my Spanish teacher's talking to me like that, and this guy on a podcast, is sitting there saying it's okay to feel how you're feeling. Don't let anybody don't don't let anybody you don't need to feel bad about anything. Isn't that where I would rather, if I was a young man, isn't that where I'd rather exist? I want to exist on that podcast. I get that.
Of course. I'd rather go to the church that tells me I'm going to be rich. That sounds great. Why would I want to hear any other message than that?
No. But my desperate, draw, I think it's so interesting considering, where I'm on TikTok or on the podcast and all the things, these amazing things that I've gotten to do. And the market I still want to tap into, the people market is a wrong word, are those men, those young boys. Because, and I'm trying desperately to figure out how to do it, because they are just as good and empathetic and loving and amazing as the rest of this planet is. They're just going down a wrong road. And if somebody doesn't get to them the way your pit bull got to that one guy, if somebody doesn't get to them, if I don't try to get to them, that's where they're going. Right? How do we do that?
I don't know. I don't know how you give a message to somebody that doesn't want to hear it. Did you watch Game of Thrones?
No, my partner's too scared of it. She won't.
I like to bring up King Joffrey a lot because he was very young and very, very evil. And similar to Warren, he universally had just a punchable face that you just your instinct was to just not respond well to that person, whatever they were doing. Right. But they went out of their way to point out that this is what happens when somebody is isolated and spoiled and royalty and has no idea what a consequence is or what responsibility is. And when you see him, especially how young he is, it's hard to imagine a transformation of any kind. It's possible. Anything's possible, but it's hard to imagine.
I guess I'm not worried about transforming the Joffreys. I don't think I have that much power. I'm thinking to have a conversation with those kind of people so that maybe, possibly, the 17-year-old living in Wisconsin goes, I never thought about what she said. I never, I've listened to this banter, right? Telling me I'm great, telling me I'm amazing, telling me I don't need to do I'm just going to be. And then she comes along, or he or whoever can get at them and says, listen, you are great, amazing, and powerful, but the road you're going on is going to destroy all of that. Right? You're walking down a path to quickly destroy every amazing thing you are. That's the person I want to get at. I don't think there's a hope in hell I'm changing Jordan Peterson's mind. I think he's done. He's cooked. Like, he is what he is, right? He's not cookie dough anymore. Sorry, Buffy references abound. But I want to get at the kids. I want to get at the 20-somethings, right? The men that feel like they have to vote and they have to ally themselves with people because they feel like they have no other place. And it might be just like you said, suck it up. It is what it is. It's growing pains. And I believe that. But I also believe we're at a very dangerous time with a lot of people with some very big microphones. And I feel as though we need to figure out a way to use our microphones to get into that space somehow. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I know that when I was a kid, and I feel like a lot of young people also, we feel things very, very deeply and wholly and completely. And it's hard to imagine or believe when somebody tells you, this is your teenage love. You can't be
Mhm.
so heartbroken. You don't believe
Yeah,
them. You don't
I
understand.
can't.
You're like, that was you, but I am different. And this was the love of my life. And life is
Right.
over now. And the more you tell me that what I'm feeling is just a blip, the less I trust you and
Yeah,
the more awful I feel. Because then I know that this is a unique problem to me that can't be solved.
right.
And I know it sounds silly, but if we could just give a pit bull to everyone in America, we would solve the pit bull problem and this problem, because it really forces you to look at something outside of yourself and to care for something outside of yourself. And for me, it changed how I view everyone, because I'm very lucky. This dog I have is very unique and a perfect ambassador for the brand. Everywhere we go, someone
The
says, I've
brand.
never seen for the they've never seen a pit bull so nice. And I mean, you can punch her in the face and she'll just go,
Right.
she won't. It doesn't
Nothing.
occur to her to be
Right.
aggressive. But every once in a while, there'll be some moment where it's going to rain and she gets stubborn or something happens and we'll have a fight in public. And I'll be like, that one moment where you just pull the leash a little too hard, or you're just like, come on, and you're just not at your best. And I know whenever that moment happens, somebody is looking at me and somebody is judging me. And they're
Right.
thinking, well, this is what you and your dog must be like all the time. And you're a
Right.
horrible person. And this dog has a terrible life. And I can't believe you beat your dog. And I know there's nothing I can say to get them to understand that this is a unique moment. And I feel like that must happen in parenting all the time. And it
All the
allowed
time.
me, right, so easy to look at that crying kid on the plane and be like, can he just shut the, you have no idea. You have no idea what they've been through or what's happening. You have no idea what that relationship with the dog is like or what's happening right now. And I don't judge anymore. When I see those
Yeah.
moments, I can easily understand this is just a moment in time and it won't go on forever. And if there was some way to get those kids to understand that what they're feeling right now is just a moment in time and it's not going to be like this forever. And there are options. There are lots of options for you out there. I don't know what they are. You're going to have to find them, but they exist. There's one thing that I feel like, especially with younger people, once you find something is an avenue to getting something, you just keep taking the same road every single time, which
Yeah.
is also dog behavior. We go, oh, this is what I have to do to get to that.
Yeah.
And as long as it works, we'll just do that. Like we will do that with our car sometimes. Like, oh, my
Mhm.
old junky car, you got to go around this side, you got to open the window, and then you got to jimmy that, and you just do it forever. You explain when somebody gets, oh, you got to jimmy that, and then you got to and we just live like that because that's how we get there. And it takes a lot to be like, can we just stop and fix this and build a new route to start this car to get you to that feeling? But when Jordan Peterson and those people sneak in and they're like, here you go, here it is. Here's something else. It's not your fault. When a religion can sneak in and go, you're supposed to
Mm.
be rich. This isn't how it's supposed to be. You're right. You're supposed
Mhm.
to be better than your neighbor. It's what God wants. God wants you to be rich. Wow, that sounds a lot better than anything else I've heard today. So I'll just go with that. But if we could show them that there are other routes to sex and to love and to acceptance and to fighting loneliness, I believe they will take them if it's not too late.
We got to give him a pit bull.
That's what I say.
I think we've discovered it. That's it. We'll just start breeding. Well, no, we're not going to start breeding because there's lots of pit bulls to be rescued. We're going to go collect all the dogs and just start
Yes.
handing them out.
I had no relationship to dogs growing up. My grandmother was afraid of them. We had no pets growing up. I had no interest in them. A thing happened. I fell in love with a pit bull. I went out and got one and it changed my life. And if you would have told me back then, I never would have believed you. My parents thought something was wrong with me. We didn't have
Well,
animals. We just didn't do that.
we've always had cats, and I got my mom a bulldog when she, a few years ago, and then she got sick. And then when she got sick, I had to sort of step up and help take care of him. And then his stomach flipped. I don't know if you heard that
Mm.
story. His stomach flipped. I had to get him to the vet. I thought
Oh,
that was it, right? And his spleen was twisted, and he had this huge surgery, and he survived, and the chances were nothing. And I realized for 2 weeks he couldn't jump. He couldn't do anything. So what did I do? I took everything out of my living room. I put up a gate, and him and I lived on the floor for 2 weeks. I wish I could describe, I've always loved him. He's a great dog. But now, Adam, if something ever, there's a connection, there's a responsibility outside yourself that once you feel that, and once you see something, this being, his whole everything, he looked at you like, wow, you slept on the floor with me for 2 weeks just to make sure. Don't think they don't know that. That's it. Now I'm hooked. Whatever that dog wants. You want a bigger house? Fine, I'll look into moving. Like, I don't know what you need, but I'm going to give it to you. And I think it's something beautiful about, some people obviously have kids, and that's another route. But my bulldog's never going to tell me that he hates me, so I don't have to worry about that. But there's this connection and empathy that I think we feel safe in having. We don't feel safe necessarily having that with people. Why? Well, because we all get our heart broken, whether it's from family, a partner, a friend. But I'm telling you right now, you don't get your heart broken by a bulldog. It's not going to happen. And so we feel safe there. And then we give it all. We give it all. So when people can't understand that, but you're right, they all need a dog.
But you said something very interesting. You discussed that feeling of being needed, and how wonderful that felt. And that can certainly bridge a gap. When somebody needs something from you and you can give it to them, it's so satisfying. When you can provide that, when you can teach a dog a lesson, or you can just watch them, you poured the water and now they're drinking it. It's magical. It's just when you can teach a lesson, when they first look at you in that moment and they go, that's what I'm supposed to do. I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. I knew it was wrong, but I didn't know what to do. And now that you've showed me what, I can relax. We all deserve to feel needed, and we all have something to offer each other.
100%. And so that's number one. And you'll hear some people talk about it and then skew it, because I think it's very important to show people what they can do for you, what you can do for them, and then have gratitude for that. I think it's the loyalty. It's the loyal. That dog, there's a level of loyalty and you want to know what unconditional love is. That's it.
Yeah.
People say every other love's unconditional. No, it's not. Listen, my cat lies on my head every night when I fall asleep, but there's still some conditions there. You better not move. Don't you listen, I love her to death, but that dog, unconditional.
You bought a king-size bed to accommodate the cat.
She sleeps horizontally.
I know.
I don't know.
That's what we do for them.
You got to look at my Instagram. Anna took a picture. I was sleeping, and she lied on my head. Her butt was on the back of my head. Her tail wrapped around my eyes. I said, "What's going on?" And she's killing herself laughing. She's like, "Don't move. That's where she wants to sleep." And I'm like, okay. But I honestly believe the connection to animals it's so incredibly powerful that I wonder that's how we break down some walls.
It has to be, because I'm telling you, I didn't believe it existed. Before I had a pit bull, when people would show me pictures of their cats and their dog, I didn't see what they saw. I did not see it. It's like the only thing I can compare it to is a religious awakening. Somebody shows you a cross and you're like, that's great. I'm glad you have something. I can't imagine what they see, but they see everything. Someone would show me their cat and I'd be like, it's an animal in a hat that you put on it, sitting on your bed, making a mess. Now, when I see the cat in the sombrero, I don't just see everything. I know everything I need to know about you. I know how you care for that. And I can tell just from the look on its face what your relationship is like, how much you guys trust each other. I can learn so much about you, and I could not see it before, but I can now. And it's been proven to work in prisons. Anytime they do those experiments of giving rescue dogs to prisoners, everybody wins. So of course they won't keep doing that, but it is proven to have success.
Why? What is wrong with us? What is wrong with us when we won't continuously go down a path that is proven to be true? Why?
See, this is why I'm such a big fan of you, because we think a lot of about a lot of similar topics, but I'm not disciplined or motivated or confident enough to take it to that next. So what are we going to do about it level that you bring everything to, where I feel like, well, now I am not a worthy soldier because Captain, I'm with you in the fight and I don't have the artillery with me. I don't have the map. I don't know. And I want to be able to have these answers for you, because it's where it always ends up inevitably. What are we going to do about it? I wish I took it that far more often.
But I think we know. That's my frustrating points are always, you and I have just discussed, like, we have gone through, I don't even remember what all we went through. I'm going to have to rewatch it before I title this episode. But we have gone through this whole episode talking about so many different things, and we've come up with solution after solution after solution, including something as seemingly easy and trivial as put dogs in prisons. We've seen it work. Why did you stop it from happening again? We know what education needs. Why are we getting in the way of it? It's almost as though we have ideas. We don't just have ideas. We have proven track records of reality. It's not a pie in the sky dream. We know.
Then the answer is going. Sorry.
And yet, what do we do? Why don't we do it? The answer is,
we go back to the first thing that you said, which is we have to bring everybody together. Because if we all worked as one, we're uncontrollable. You can't stop us. We can do whatever we want. If we vote as one, if we act as one, if we step out as one, if you bring people together, we can have the change we want. But asking a working person to also fight these changes against a broken system that is working against them while paying their bills and raising a family, it's too much. It's just too much. And it's built that way, obviously, to keep it that way so that we don't have time to learn and to grow and to do those things. The fact that if we really want to call ourselves a planet and the internet is not just free and readily available to everyone, we're not a free society. Because when talk about doing something with yourself, if you have access to those things, you have a world of possibility in front of you, but it all costs money and you can't ask people to do all that. But if we all voted as one, if we all took it, one of these causes and made it, the majority of people in America want what I want. Mm-hmm. I don't meet them all, but when you poll them, they want, we all want the same things. Yeah. We just can't vote that way. We can't get it through that way. Or even if we do, there's an electoral college there to mess it up.
Sometimes I feel incompetent. Sometimes I sit down. It's funny that you think I have these. I go to those places, but when I get to those places, speaking of not feeling soldier enough, I'm like, but, and people will say, Joanna, why don't you run? And I say, oh my God, whose table would I sit at? Heaven help me. Who, and I'm talking about Canada, right? So we have 3 major political parties, a couple of extra parties. I mean, whose table am I sitting at that I'm either not going to disagree with it wholeheartedly, or I'm going to piss off because I think they're being inauthentic and they're full of crap anyways. And I'm probably going to piss off the electorate because I'm going to say what they don't want to hear, which is a very simple truth. You want something better, it's going to cost more money. That's it. It can't cost less money. It's going to cost more money. Are you in or are you out? This is my first question. And I feel like I wouldn't get elected past the front door. My mom would vote for me, but that's about it. Everybody else would be like, what? She wants more money from me? Right. Get the hell out of here. And I'd be sitting there going, but why are we believing people that are promising you the moon and saying, but don't worry, you only have to pay 5% tax? We need to take accountability for that. We love to blame other people. And then we go and vote, like in Ontario. We voted in a premier basically because he gave people back $140 in a license plate sticker fee. What? And then we're shocked when he has to cut healthcare because he just lost $1 billion in tax revenue because I need the $130 in my bank account. Anybody does. I understand some people paycheck to paycheck. I get it, but that's not going to make or break the bank. But real healthcare is.
And that's
Right?
bribery.
Well, that's all they do. They shouldn't be allowed to do it. And take away all their teleprompters. I don't want to see one. Not one. That's my first rule.
I'm not gonna. The teleprompters are not gonna. I'm not gonna die on that one.
Well, here's why. They're so full of it, they don't have any authentic ideas or authentic, reasonable ability to have a conversation. Why are we letting them run the show? Somebody else wrote that speech. They didn't even write it. They're really, really bad actors, hun. Really bad actors. They can't even deliver a Michael Douglas president speech. You're giving me what? They're giving me, like, really bad actors reading off a teleprompter, and nobody buys it. And if nobody's buying it, nobody's getting behind them. Then what? Then we're sitting here trying to be inspired, right? That's what we want. We want to be inspired. So we look to TV, and we look to art, and we look to, poetry and literature, and we look to these places to be inspired by magical places, trying to find, ironically, and I think I'm using that word right, authenticity in fiction. I think that's the only time I've ever used that word right. Did I use it right? Alanis Morissette has fucked it up for me forever. I don't know. It's not.
I can't speak about Alanis, but I know that it's a reoccurring theme, and it's true that I think we've proven right here that we all gravitate toward it, and that we're looking for it, and that we deserve it. From the cigarette to the political platform, we deserve something authentic. That's ours.
There we go. Well, hon, I have stolen all of your time today, but I'm going to do two things. Number one, I'm going to ask you to stick around when I stop recording, because I have two questions for you I want to ask, but not on camera. And I'm not telling any of my listeners what those questions are. And number two, will you promise to come back and do another part?
Anytime. This was so much fun. And I feel like we left a lot of things open-ended that we need to.
Hun, we can go on. We'll just book days. I'll take a couple days off work. I'll tell them I have important stuff to do. I think we could talk for hours upon hours.
I'm going to get the tent and a generator. I'm going to go out to Joshua Tree. I'm going to set it up, and we're just going to rage. We're going to figure it all out.
California, you can't get an internet service. So I constantly talk to people, and they're like, oh, sorry, I'm going to lose you. What's going on out there? Somebody get some more towers.
We do need more satellites out here.
Thank you, sir, for being on, for being amazing, for being articulate and open and empathetic and all of those amazing things. I really appreciate it. And I can't wait to have you back on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. This has been so much fun. Thank you.
And thank you guys for listening. I will see you next week. Same bat time, same bat station. Dismissed.